Juan Måla. Juan Måla woke up hungry in his shack next to the Hagåtña swamp. He walked barefoot all around the dirt floor of his home, lifting up the pandanus mats, looking for pesos. He counted 10. And telling his growling stomach to quiet down and stop worrying, he pulled on his only pair of cut-off pants and walked down to the mud pools to retrieve his skinny old carabao. "Look here, lazy beast," he talked to the sleepy-eyed animal. "You are going to finally make me some money today." With that, Juan made his poor carabao swallow the 10 pesos he found in his home. "Be patient with me, beast," Juan said to the animal, "for by the end of today, you and I will both be fed." On the road, astride his carabao, Juan whistled a happy morning tune, bouncing up and down to the lilt of his song. Dressed in his cut-off pants and dirt-stained face, Juan made quite a sight coming down the traveler's path. Indeed, he was a vision to a local wealthy rancher who was traveling the same road that morning in the opposite direction. The rancher caught sight of the happy Juan. He approached him and yelled out laughing, for what would a poor dirty man have to be happy about, he wondered. "Layu, why are you so happy today?" "Senor, it just so happens that I'm the richest man on island." Surprised, the rancher said, "Oh, really? And how, my boy, did that come to be?" "Why," said Juan, "would you believe me if I told you that my carabao here has made me rich? You see, after I make him walk in circles about 20 times and then give him a sound whipping, he spits out coins." Juan patted his whip made of the spines of coconut fronds and winked at the rancher. Naturally, the rancher was doubtful, so Juan demonstrated. Juan took his lazy beast by the rope and led him around in circles more than 20 times. Round and round the two went, and the poor animal, who could barely walk straight by then, drunkenly lurched from side to side, watching his master laughing and whistling at him the whole time. Juan kept one eye on the wealthy rancher and the other eye on his beast, and just when the carabao was on the edge of passing out completely, Juan took his whip and whipped the beast good. The poor animal was struck so hard that he threw up. And because the only things the poor creature had eaten all morning were the coins, all 10 of them came spewing out of his mouth as projectiles. The rancher stood with his eyes wide and his jaw slack at the sight of 10 coins. His greedy mind was racing. "How much would you be willing to part with this animal?" the rancher asked Juan. "Juan," coyly said, "Why, senor, you wouldn't expect to have me part with this carabao for mere pesos. The fact that he spits out pesos for me, well..." But the rancher was hoping that Juan really was just poor and therefore stupid, Chamorro man. He offered Juan 10 gold coins, for surely, the rancher thought to himself, that carabao would make up tenfold for his loss. Juan, who had more of a weakness for gold than the pesos, gave the lazy, starving beast to the rich old rancher. And both men parted ways in opposite directions, clapping hands and whistling their happy tunes. Juan whistled and walked away, perhaps just a little bit faster than the wealthy man, in case he was found out sooner rather than later. When far enough off the main road, Juan, remember, still dirty and shirtless in his cut-off pants, but now full pockets, wisely thought that he should perhaps hide all his newly acquired gold. He headed for the beach, and on the way, he broke off a thick lemoncina branch for a pala. He knew he'd have to do a bit of digging in the sand, wouldn't he? Juan found a perfect spot on the beach with clear landmarks. He used his stick to dig up a hole and then to flatten the mound once he was done. He stamped his feet around to mess up the spot. Satisfied, Juan turned his stick over and tapped on rocks or tree stumps along the shore. He walked away from his loot, thinking about what he could buy with his coins. He bumped into a fisherman who, with an empty net slung over his shoulder, noticed Juan fiddling with the stick. The fisherman, lifting his eyebrows in judgment, mockingly asked Juan Måla, "Is that stick so precious to you?" "Oh, this?" Juan held it between them. Why, this stick helps me find money hidden in the ground. The fisherman almost fell over laughing. He expressed a great doubt at Juan's words. Unfazed, Juan said, look. He held up the stick, focused his gaze on it, and the stick, as if something were pulling it, pointed back toward the direction from which Juan came. And Juan, grinning at the fisherman, turned around to follow the stick, his arms outstretched. The fisherman ran up behind him, and the two men, guided magically by the stick, made an abrupt stop. Through some magic, the stick pointed at a seemingly random mound of sand. Of course, when Juan crouched to dig up the area, lo and behold, the fisherman stood transfixed at the sight of gold coins that had been buried beneath. Juan scooped up the gold coins like grains of sand. They fell through his fingers as he smiled at the fisherman. It was indeed a miraculous sight to behold. I will give you 200 pesos for that stick, exclaimed the shocked man. Juan Måla, at first reluctant, eventually let the fisherman have the magic stick. For 200 pesos, thank you. Now, Juan, with his pockets fuller than before, went back to the village, now to buy some clothes. He needed pants with deeper pockets, and maybe even a bag for his gold coins. The shopkeeper, who knew Juan, was slightly disgusted by his filth as he walked in the store, but changed his demeanor when he saw all the money that Juan pulled from his pockets. What can 200 pesos buy me? Asked naive Juan, who had never set foot in that shop before. Delighted, the shopkeeper showed him some fancy European pants and a clean white cotton shirt with shiny buttons. He also presented Juan with some leather shoes, like the ones the fancy caballeros wear, the shopkeeper insisted. Juan, who only cared a little to know what the Spanish or Chamorro gentlemen wore, politely played along and asked the shopkeeper if the shoes were made in Spain. The shopkeeper said that he only carried the finest and most well-made items as he was tying the laces on Juan's shoes. Finally, the shopkeeper brought Juan a very distinguished top hat to complete your look, senor. It will go well with the shoes. But in reality, the shopkeeper was hoping the hat would hide the fact that Juan's long curly hair had not been combed or washed for what looked like days. The shopkeeper, happy that Juan was willing to be rid of so much money in his store, really was trying to help Juan look his best. So he tied the wild mane back for Juan. In the mirror, the shopkeeper remarked that the white shirt with the blue pants complemented his dark skin very well. And Juan was seduced as well by what he saw. With his makeover complete and his 200 pesos spent, Juan left the store looking nothing like the shirtless, shoeless, dirty man who had walked in there for the first time. He now looked the part of the land rich. Outside the shop, the Spanish gobernador came trotting by Juan on his horse. The gobernador noticed this gentleman, so proper and fine, and concluded that he must be one of the wealthy natives, and was therefore of a reliable and trustworthy sort. Pardon, senor, but have you heard of Juan Måla, the trickster? The governor asked him. Juan Måla, exclaimed Juan Måla, but of course I know him very well. The whole village knows of him. He is shameful, that fool. What has he done this time? That petty thief, always tricking people out of their money. I've never been able to catch him. But this time I've received 2 complaints about him today. One from a wealthy rancher and the other from a good, hard-working fisherman. The gobernador sighed heavily and shook his head in extreme disapproval. Juan shook his head in unison with the distinguished man. I am not surprised at this news, senor, but still how very sad. And then Juan suddenly had an idea. Senor, I know of some places where this Måla is known to hide out. His hideouts are all very far from here, but I can go and try to get him for you, gobernador. Oh, yes, please. Oh, if I can bring him to justice, just imagine how much honor España will give me, the gobernador said, and his face brightened immediately. Indeed, it was quite good fortune for him to have bumped into this fine young gentleman with his brilliant idea. If you lend me your horse, said Juan, I will bring him back to you much faster. Juan bent at his waist in an at-your-service sort of manner, gracefully waving his arm in front of his face. The governor, overjoyed, easily complied with this request. The villagers who were looking at this, they looked on in awe as they watched Juan slowly mount the beautiful, proud beast. The villagers dropped their jaws as he safely rode the Spanish gobernador's horse right in front of the Spanish governor himself, outside the village borders. The Spanish gobernador clapped throughout the whole scene, yelling, "Viva, viva," to this fine young man on his lovely horse, riding off into the sunset at the horizon. The gobernador imagined his award ceremony for bringing that Juan Måla to justice. But what the Spanish gobernador did not imagine was that he would see neither Juan Måla nor his horse ever again. Juan Måla now had fine clothes, a fine horse, and some gold coins. He was clearly a happy-go-lucky young man, but there were a few things that irked him. One in particular was the phony caballero. He was known in the village as one of those mestizos, those half-chamorros who profit from the Spanish being on island, yet who need the locals to be kind to him, to like him, to want to be friends with him. He showed off too much. He was always dressed in the finest, most colorful and modern fashion of the day, but he still managed to look bad in the clothes. He walked around the village, sometimes with his nose in the air, the brightly colored threads of his pants and shirt glistening in the sun, blinding the villagers. But the locals knew the caballero talked too much. "Hablador," they'd say of him often. He'd walk the village, eager to let people know just how fabulous he was. If the caballero only barely knew a person, he would stop him and talk about how he had to turn down the prettiest girls in the village. "Did you know?" he would start off his story. Then he would continue with, "These women just won't leave me alone." Then he'd throw his head back, laughing at the seeming nuisance of being chased by beautiful women. Any subject was fair game for the caballero. He would talk to whoever happened to be in his path that day. Sometimes he would ask an innocent bystander, "Did you know that I've been asked to advise the gobernador on certain local matters?" He doesn't know how to handle the natives," the caballero would add. "The gobernador knows that I know all the goings on in the village and that I know very well how to handle the ignorant locals." Ignoring the deep look of insult on the face of the poor victim to whom he was talking, the caballero would snort out a crude laugh, a laugh that if he was in the vicinity of it caused Juan Måla's spine to bristle and his fists to ball up and tighten. Thus, as good fortune would have it, while Juan was rushing off back to the beach with the gobernador's horse, he rode quickly past the caballero, who was taking a long walk outside the village on one of his regular morning constitutionals. Juan dismounted at shoreline, tied off his beautiful steed, and quickly got into position at the base of a steep and imposing cliff that butted the shoreline. In this instant, Juan was bent over at the waist, with his arms stretched out, pushing up against the side of a tall cliff. At first glance, Juan looked as if he were going to throw up. When the caballero finally approached the cliff, amused, nosy, and with no intention of helping him, he asked Juan, "What are you doing?" "I'm holding up the cliff." Juan's voice was shaky. The caballero noticed Juan Måla's legs quivering, his feet dug deeply into the ground. He saw that Juan's outstretched arms were shaking and that Juan was breathing hard, almost panting. In truth, Juan felt he was a tad bit overdressed for the beach. Sweat beads had formed on his forehead. "No, really," said the caballero. "What are you doing?" Juan repeated himself with urgency, almost yelling this time. "I'm holding up the cliff. Didn't you see me rush past you on my horse? The gobernador notified me about the danger of the cliff and has held me responsible for taking care of it. If I don't hold it up, the entire cliff will come tumbling down. And what a disaster that would be for any and all passers-by." As if on cue, or as if si Zeus Gilangit were helping Juan out, a few pebbles from up above the cliff got dislodged and fell the entire length of the cliff, landing at the feet of the caballero, who jumped back. Juan continued, "This cliff needs the strength of at least 2 men to keep it from falling. I'm really out of strength, senor. I'm running out of strength." Juan yelled and turned his head to face the caballero. He gasped at the sight of the gentleman. "Senor, you look strong, as if you have the power of 2 men. Senor, you are the strongest man I've seen pass by me these last 2 days." Juan continued, "Surely, senor, if you held up the cliff alone, it would be easy for you, and I could run back to the village and get some help for us down here." The caballero looked at Juan and then at his arms and thought to himself, "Of course I can hold up this cliff alone." Because the caballero considered his not being informed of this village emergency as an affront to his standing among the locals, he rudely told Juan, "Move over." The caballero was confident in his muscles. Juan carefully removed one hand while the caballero moved into position. Then Juan carefully removed his other hand from the side of the cliff. The caballero dug his feet into the ground. The cliff surprisingly felt light as a feather to the gentleman, and without any effort, he yelled out to Juan, "Go now, get some more men to figure out this problem, but no rush, I will be fine." "Yes, I'm sure you will do just fine," said Juan Måla, smiling to himself. And when Juan untied and mounted his beautiful horse, he looked back in complete satisfaction to see that the caballero had settled in for the long haul and was indeed very happy to hold up a cliff that really didn't need any holding up. Thus, at the end of the day, Juan Måla had rid his village of the village jerk, earned 10 gold coins, got himself fancy new clothes and a beautiful horse, but he still had nothing for his hungry stomach to eat. The end.